Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Zoo School Live. My name is Laura, and thank you for joining us on this wonderful Tuesday. We are actually going to enjoy and take advantage of some of the snow that we've been getting constantly, it seems, for the last month. We're going to talk a little bit about animal tracks and how to identify them in your backyard. So I'm going to go over a few of the most common ones you might see, and then we're going to have some very special animal guests do a little playtime in the snow and see if we can get some tracks live for you guys today. So as always with every Zoo School episode, make sure you guys drop any questions you have in the comments and we will go through and try to answer them towards the end of our broadcast. So most of us are probably familiar with the types of animals we might have living in our backyards, maybe squirrels, rabbits, potentially different types of birds. This time of year is a really cool way to explore and see what those animals are up to by looking at the tracks that they've left behind. So we're going to get a little bit closer and I'm going to show you guys a couple examples that you could see. The first one we're going to start with is pretty easy to identify. So this is actually the pattern of tracks that the white-tailed deer would leave behind. So they are an animal that has a hoof, so you can see that more sharp design there to the front, and it looks kind of like you would see on a goat or a horse as well. Now, we have a lot of different ways of identifying tracks. We want to look at their shape, their size, and their pattern, and the pattern can really be helpful because this is what we kind of use as the general size and shape identifier, but this is actually what those tracks can look like in real life. So if it's really slushy, deep snow, you might see that it's just kind of pushed in a little bit more. You won't get the full pointed toe shape, but you still do have those two parts to the hoof. And sometimes you do get more of that rounded hoof shape there. And a lot of times deer are going to be walking with their feet kind of just a little catty-corner to each other, not quite right directly behind. So deer are a common one. We have them living all over the place. Whether you live in an urban or suburban area or more out in a rural type area, you're going to have white-tailed deer hanging around. So they're a good one to look for. You also, this time of year, can find their sheds. So this is a white-tailed deer antler. So the male deer wear antlers on top of their head. They're used for defending themselves and for fighting for a mate. And they actually grow a new set of antlers every single year. So this time of year in February, they're usually losing their old antlers that they've worn out for the year, and they're gonna drop them off of their heads. They actually separate at the base where they would meet the skull. They fall off, and then they start the process all over again. So another sign of these animals being around is if you look for and find their antlers, which is pretty cool. So white-tailed deer, they have a very distinct hoof pattern. The next one we're gonna look at is a little bit of a smaller animal. So this is what you're gonna see usually as the pattern. And this is one of my favorite animal print patterns because it reminds me of like little boots, kind of. You have like the toe and the heel here. And believe it or not, we might think that the track pattern is going this way because when we're looking at a lot of animals, they mainly have small front feet and bigger back feet. But this is actually an animal that's moving this direction because this is a rabbit. And rabbits actually jump, they hop with their front feet landing, or their back feet landing in front of their front feet. So this is kind of what that pattern's gonna look like in the snow. So you're gonna see sometimes some drag marks from their little feet, but you're always gonna see those big back feet in front of the front feet, which is pretty cool. It's really hard for us to imagine jumping that way because our bodies just don't move in that direction. But rabbits are a very common animal, again, in urban and suburban and rural areas. So you've probably seen little prints around like this. Now, a very close example as well is gonna be the squirrel. So squirrels are gonna have a similar jump pattern. They're gonna have their front feet landing behind their hind feet in the same way that a rabbit would, but they're gonna have more of a distinct toe pattern. So you can see here, those toes are really long. You can see claws on them, whereas on a rabbit, their fur is very thick on their foot pads, so you'd never really see those toes as much. So squirrels are gonna have a similar pattern. They're just gonna be a little bit more long in the toe with their little claws visible. Now I have a couple examples of other types of feet. These are not prints that we have on us to look at today, but some other animals that might inhabit your backyard. This is from an opossum. Opossums have very distinct feet because they actually have a thumb-like toe on their back foot that helps them to grab and grip. And then they have very long, very dexterous fingers on the front as well for holding on and climbing trees. Then we also have a little skunk print here, so they kind of have more of a cat-shaped paw with a little bit of an extension in the back, and then they have these sharp claws. And we might be watching for some little skunk prints later today. So they have a pretty distinct paw pattern when they're running around in the snow. And then this last one is from a raccoon. This is the back foot of a raccoon. They have a very big foot. It almost looks like a human foot with the size and the shape, with all these little toes pointing out. So those are 3 different animals that also live in our area that you might end up seeing tracks for that are a little bit different. Another common set you might see are for birds. So this one's pretty easy to identify because they have a very different toe structure from any of our other animals. They're gonna have usually 3 toes in the front, 1 toe in the back, and you're probably gonna see a ton of them all around, especially if you have a bird feeder. We talked about the backyard bird count a couple weeks ago. That's a really great place to look for bird tracks on the snow. Now you might have different shapes depending on the type of bird. For example, this is gonna be your owl foot or a large bird of prey foot. You can see they have the 3 toes and the 4th in the back, but they also have very sharp talons. Whereas if you see a webbed foot design like this, that's most likely gonna be some kind of waterfowl, like a duck or a goose. So you can look at those different details as well. All right, last but not least, we're gonna take a look at this shape and pattern. So if you live in an area where there is a little bit of cover nearby, maybe some trees and brush, even if you think you live in more of a populated person area, this is a type of animal that could come through. This is from a fox. Now, if we look at a dog print and compare it to a fox print, they are very similar. You guys probably can recognize this shape and pattern. They're also very similar to cats. So we have 2 different types of cat print here. This is a bobcat, and this is a cougar or mountain lion. So thankfully, most likely, you're not going to see these prints in your backyard, but they do all have a very similar shape. The big difference in cat and dog or dog species prints is going to be whether or not you see claws. On a cat, these guys can retract or hide their claws, whereas on a dog or a coyote or a fox, those claws are going to be a little bit more obvious in the snow. So if you find prints that are pretty small, but dog-shaped, that could mean there's a fox in your area. And they're pretty active this time of year because they are looking for food. They're running around trying to escape the cold and stay safe. So they will move through usually at dusk and dawn. And they kind of have a pattern. We'll turn this so it's a little bit easier to see. Again, of almost similar to the deer where it's kind of not quite in line with the same foot, which is pretty cool. So we are going to do a little experimenting with some of our animals. So what we're gonna do is we have a very fun snow space set up that we're gonna switch to in just a moment. And we have a few snacks and cool things for our animals. So we're actually gonna have some of our animals come out and we're gonna see if they wanna interact with the snow. Now, I can't promise that all of them are gonna be super pumped about it. It's not something that they always get to interact with, but this is a form of enrichment. And obviously this is a little safer doing it inside than taking them and plopping them in the snow outside. So this is a controlled situation. We're gonna start with our friend Oliver Rabbit. So we're going to have Oliver come out and explore the snow and see what his thoughts are on it. And maybe if we're lucky, we might even get him to hop around a little bit and show off those funny prints. But there is also a pretty big possibility that he may say no. So let's see if he wants to come out and explore a little bit. Now, the rabbits that we would have in our backyards are definitely going to be well adapted for the winter and the snow compared to our friend Oliver, who gets to live in a nice, cozy, warm habitat here at the zoo and is not a wild species, so he would not be found out and about. Yep. So he's not super into it, but that's okay. We'll see if he wants to come around. Maybe he'll check it out again. So that we were looking at those rabbit prints. I mentioned that their fur is very thick and that it covers a lot of their paw pad. And that's something that helps wild rabbits keep their feet warm in the winter. So it's kind of like wearing snow boots for us. It keeps the snow from getting those little toe pads too cold. So he's not super convinced that this is something he wants to do, but he does keep checking it out, keep smelling it. Many of our rabbits here in Pennsylvania are still active during the winter. Now, if we get a really big snow like we've been having, they might kind of hunker down for a few days and not come out a whole lot, but they do not truly hibernate. They are active in the winter time, so they do have to come out and get food. And so that's where you'll find their prints hopping around your backyard, your hedges. Maybe if you have like some brush area, that's a good place to look for rabbit prints in the snow. Well, Oliver does not seem very impressed, which is okay. Snow's not for everyone. I know there's a few people that feel that way as well. So what we're gonna do is we'll let Oliver hop on away, and I'm gonna get some stuff set up for our next animal friend. We're going to bring out our skunk. So I have some snacks here we'll take a close look at. So I've got some really good food here we're gonna let our friend Pesto the skunk try to find. So I'm gonna hide it in the snow. And remember, we had that little skunk footprint, so we'll see if we can get him to leave any footprints behind. So we'll give him a few easy ones, but we'll really stick some good snacks in there. I'm gonna make sure we use some of his favorite stuff. And I'm gonna cover it up a little bit too, so he has to kind of dig, because skunks have really good claws for digging around. All right, we'll bring our little skunk friend over. Gonna make a little trail over here. Get him interested. Okay. Let's see if Mr. Pesto is excited about the snow. We know he's always excited about food, so we're hoping that he enjoys the snow. Now again, similar to our rabbits, skunks in the wild around here in Pennsylvania would be active year-round. Now, of course, if there's a lot of snow on the ground, it's going to make their job finding food a little bit harder. So they might sleep for a few days, kind of wait out the weather, but they do have to actively find food all winter. They are not true hibernators. So they're going to use their sense of smell, like you see Pesto doing right now, and of course those claws. So they'll kind of dig around and try to uncover maybe some different roots and plants that they can eat. Maybe try to find some little invertebrates like bugs and worms that are really cold and sleepy and easy to find. So they are still going to have to find food and track down good calories for the winter time. Now Pesto doesn't seem too bothered by the snow, but again, he, just like Oliver, he does not live outdoors, so he gets to enjoy this in a nice, controlled, safe environment. And he's putting that nose to good use. I'm going to see if I can cover up some of his snacks a little bit, see if we can get him to have to dig. Gave him a little bit too easy of a time here, huh? There you go. So they have super, super sharp teeth in their mouths to help them eat just about anything. So they are what we call omnivores. They're going to use, again, those claws to dig, and then once they get those teeth, that food in their mouth, they're going to use those sharp, sharp teeth. He's doing a nice job sniffing around. So this is, again, a form of enrichment to try to keep him active and to encourage some of those natural behaviors. Because, again, living here at the zoo, he doesn't really have to search for his food. We do make it a challenge for him. We give him stuff to hide his food in, but he never has to brave the cold. Now, they also have very thick fur all over their body to keep them nice and warm, but his toes are a little bit more exposed. You can kind of see on his back feet especially that he doesn't have fur all over his foot like a rabbit would. So he would have to be careful about frostbite in the winter. So this type of animal does usually hide out in a burrow or den of some kind. So a lot of times people have encounters with skunks in the winter when they've decided to hole up under our houses or our sheds and our garages because it's a nice place to find warmth. And we're not always appreciative of that, but you do have to understand that, you know, as much as they are adapted for the winter and the weather, they do take advantage of the humans that have entered their space and use that to their advantage as well. So they do have to watch out for frostbite on their little feet and toe pads. Thankfully, the rest of their body is pretty well covered with fur. So remember, guys, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. We're going to have one more animal come out and play in the snow. Pesto's doing a great job of exploring for his food today. even though he's doesn't usually have to brave the winter weather. He's doing a nice job. You might be able to hear some of those little chomping sounds. He's quite a noisy eater, but pretty fun to watch. All right, guys, I'm going to prep our next animal. We're going to let him kind of finish up his last little treats here. He doesn't want to miss a single thing. Now, Pesto is a striped skunk, and those of you who are Zoo School Live frequent viewers, you probably remember meeting him over in the fall, and I think last summer as well, so he's been on Zoo School quite a lot. And like other skunks, he does have an ability to protect himself with a stinky spray, but he has had his scent gland removed, so that's why we're able to very safely get nice up and close and personal with him. We also work with Pesto very closely to make sure he's nice and comfortable. All right, little Pesto, I think we are ready to share our last animal. He's convinced that there is more good treats to find. Ready? Good job, buddy. All right, so for our last animal friend here, I have an extra special treat. I have some handmade snowballs, but these are not snowballs that you guys would want to try to eat. Oh, we got some really great prints from Pesto. How fun. You can see those little toes and a little bit of his claw marks. Awesome. All right, guys, so I have some really super special meatballs. Now these are not snowballs. These are not snowballs that you guys would want. They're actually meatball snowballs. So you can see there's some chicken stuffed in there. And I'm gonna hide these around here because we're gonna have our friend Hoover the vulture come out and see if she'll make some snow prints for us today. Now Hoover is definitely not a super big fan of snow in general. Vultures are an animal that lives around here, but that does not mean that they really like the cold weather. They often prefer it a little bit warmer, but they are able to adapt and survive our winters. All right, so let's have Miss Hoover come out. She's gonna come say hi first, and then see if she can figure out where all her delicious snacks are. You'll get to see that beak in action. So vultures have a very long beak with kind of a little hook at the end. That helps them to get into tiny little places, helps them to pick apart a carcass, get all the good meats. I think you missed a few. See if she'll explore a little bit more here. So she's gonna leave behind that bird-shaped print with those toes in the front, 3 toes in the front, 1 toe in the back. And you can see she does not have any feathers on her feet. So that's one of the reasons why vultures are not super big fans of the snow and the cold. They do have a little bit more risk when it comes to frostbite than some other species like owls would. So her head and her feet are exposed, and that does put her a little bit at risk. So you might see vultures in the wintertime kind of congregating on roofs or near businesses, anywhere that there is maybe heat escaping. So if you have a lot of birds that like sitting on your roof, that's often not a good sign. Your insulation is probably not working out too great for you. So it's working out in the favor of the birds. Hey, over here. Oh, that's my stuff. There's more in there. Good job, Hoover. All right, it looks like she found all of her snacks. Come on. She's gonna start exploring now. So we're gonna have her go on home. And we can probably get a good look at some Hoover prints. She left behind some little footprints. It looked like there was a good one, like right here is a good one. You can see those 3 toes. Now obviously her prints are gonna be a lot bigger than some of our other backyard birds that you might find around your home. All right, guys. So, I'm not sure if we have any questions today, but we'll go through and try our best to answer some. Again, if you think of something and you want to pop that in the comments and you don't get to it right now on the live, we'll come back later and try to answer them as well.
So it looks like Owen, age 11, would like to know if we ever let the animals outside in the snow here at the zoo.
That's a great question, Owen. So many of our exhibit animals do have indoor and outdoor spaces, and if it's safe for them, we allow them to explore. So our red panda really likes the snow, our big cats really like the snow. Now some of our animals, like our giraffe, we can't safely let them outside because they're really not designed for snow and ice. They could get really hurt. But if we can, if the temperatures are warm enough and there's no health or safety risk, we love to give our animals a chance to play in the snow. Now the ones we saw today, we brought the snow into them because it's a little bit safer than us letting them be outside and running around without any kind of protection outside.
All right, I think that might be all of our questions for right now.
Awesome, guys. Well, again, thank you for joining us for Zoo School. We can kind of take one final look here at some of our prints as we sign off. Again, as always, if you guys have questions, anything you want to know about any of our animal friends we met today, or any of the information we talked about, please don't hesitate to put that in the comments. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching Hoover and Pesto and Oliver enjoy the snow today, and that you guys have a safe and wonderful snow day as well. And we will see you next week on Thursday, or this week on Thursday.